Well, couldn't make it 2 weeks in a row without stopping doing videos, could you fat boy? Right, let's get into it. Gear review. Hello and welcome to another episode of the HEMA Show. Like always, I'm your host Stuart. This is edited by my mate Andy. Say hi, Andy. Excellent, well done. Yes, apologies. Another week where we didn't do a video last week. Had a pretty gnarly illness going on. So sorry, I couldn't really talk. So it kind of would have been a shit video if you just looking at me for about 20 minutes, which, you know, great for my ego, but not so good for my watch time. So today we're doing a gear review. Specifically, a sword. The more observant of you may have noticed this is a sword. Well done. This is the Sigi Sabre Pro. Full disclosure, at time of recording, I'm not a massive sabre fan. Of all of the commonly fought HEMA weapons, sabre's probably my least fought, and certainly one I have the least interest in. Doesn't mean to say that I don't really have any input on it, but it just doesn't tickle my pickle, doesn't jimmy my jam. So take this review for what it is. This is an objective view, at least, if nothing else. Purely from a coach's point of view, I may think of some things that maybe you may not as a buyer. So, the Sabre Sigi Pro. First off, before I go any further, general thoughts on it, and then I will go into it a little bit more. Yeah, it's all right. Cool. Right, so, yeah, the Sabre Sigi Pro, this retails from Sigi at €295. The overall length is exactly 1 meter with a big old asterisk after that, which I'll circle around to in a moment. The blade length is 86 centimeters. The blade width starts at 2.4 to 2.5 and then tapers down to the tip, which is 2 centimeters. And then the weight is, and this is a bit that kind of bugs me, it's advertised anywhere between 780 and 820 grams, which, if any of you have any basis of maths, you'll know that that's a 40-gram swing. And in a single-handed weapon, a 40-gram deviation is a huge amount. So that's the first big red flag for me there for this sword. Now, it doesn't mean that I dislike it, but just be aware of that. There is one sabre may be a gram more heavy than, or heavier than the next one, but the acceptable range is 40 grams, which is a huge swing of weight, especially when it comes to sabres. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what to think about that. This is the straight version. I dread to think what the bent version is, or the curved version, but this is one of the more curved sabres that I've fought with. So I have fought with this sabre, and I've fought against this sabre. So generally, tip to arse, let's go through it. Spatulated tip. It's nice to have a spatulated tip on a sabre. Rolled tips, obviously preferable. There are some competitions that don't accept spatulated. Most or all competitions will accept a rolled tip, but just check with your competition provider before, and also your club leader before you actually make the purchase, whether a spatulated tip is okay. Be aware that you may need to blunt it, put some plastomorph on it or anything like that, or white morph. The blade is a little wide. It's nice. The fuller is very, very nice, very consistent. It's one massive bugbear of mine. When you get an inconsistent fuller, you can kind of see it wiggle up and down. So it's a nice fuller. Fuller goes all the way to the tip as well. And I suspect that's what helps the weight distribution, which I'll go into in a minute. The blade is really, really long, 86 centimeters, which I know that really, when you actually look at it, it's not that long comparatively to many of the other sabres. It feels like a fucking artillery piece, this thing. It just feels long. I don't know why. I think it's just the spatulated tip is gaining my eyes. So I'm just looking at it the whole time and it just feels like it's really bloody far away. But it does feel long. And what that does is that may actually help your distance. The first real criticism I have of this sword, this, check it out. Wobble, 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 wobble. Wobble, baby, wobble, baby, wobble. Wobble, baby, wobble, baby, wobble, baby, wobble. That's a technical term. It is an incredibly floppy sword. But then it's a Sigi. That's to be expected with Sigis. It's the Sigi flop, right? Most Sigis, if not all Sigis, it's another fucking siren. Fuck me sideways. I promise you guys I don't live in a rough area. Just, they know when I record, the fucks. Anyway, right. It's the Sigi flop. All Sigis flop. All Sigis are flippity floppity little fuckers. But some people like that, some people don't. For me, it doesn't bother me that much. You should be twisting the wrist for your parries anyway and getting behind it. You should not be parrying and flap into the side with your parries. So the people that say that you need to be careful of floppy sabre because people can cut through the parry, is not really the end of the world. Your parries should be nice and strong anyway, and your opponent should be aligning the hit properly anyway. So even if they come in flat and they chop around your parry, that shouldn't be landing anyway. So good reffing should mitigate that, but honestly relying on a ref is, well, yes. So the blade is good. On balance, it is a good blade. Just a little floppy, it's not perfect, so just take that for what it is. When it comes down to the guard, it is really pretty. It is a really pretty guard. It's just a good looking sword in general. It is a really nice, good looking sword. A little narrower, a little less meat here. These bits really narrow when you get your gloves in. You can see I'm barehanded at the moment. Again, I'm watching the freaking light fitting of Doom up there. But you can see my knuckle at the moment is really close to the inside of the guard. So once you've got some gloves on, there's very, very little room for manoeuvre inside here. Just holding it in the last 5 minutes before the record, giving it a swing around whilst I was waiting for the kettle to boil. I've basically got on a blister coming up. The camera's not going to pick it up from this distance, but I've got a blister coming up on this knuckle here, just from wiggling it about, so it is an incredibly snug fit. This is not mine, this is Andy's. Cheers for letting me borrow this, Andy. But yeah, if this were mine, I would be tempted just to get it in a vise and just lever this wing, this side of the cup. So your knuckle side, not your thumb side, your knuckle side, just out ever so slightly, maybe 1/4 of a centimetre, 1/2 centimetre, something like that, just to give you a little bit more flex, because it's not going to take many parries for that to start moving around and squishing down. So be mindful that this may change shape, and it will at some point, I'm fairly certain, feel a little tight. I fought against this last night at time of recording. This is, what day are we on now? Tuesday. I fought against this and with it on Monday. I am an FAist through and through. My heart and soul belongs to FA for my sins. So what does that mean? It means that I snipe the fuck out of hands. It's what I do, it's what I've trained to do, it's what I'm best at. I really am a hand hitter. So you may think that this is unnecessarily exposing the hand and you're going to get all sorts of hand hits here, but honestly, in practice, it's not going to happen. It's really not going to happen. It's just a slight, even just a slight variation, and it really just closes it down. The few hand hits I did get, bearing in mind that I was aiming specifically for the hand, they felt lucky. They felt like the outliers. Just because there's a little less material here, I don't think that will compromise the amount that you get hit on the hand. Doubly so if you just have a decent parry. Obviously don't parry with your thumb behind it, you'll break your thumb. But just a slight twist and you will completely cover yourself. It's really not an issue. People will worry about that. I'm categorically saying that's not a problem. It's not an issue. So yeah, the hand it's safe. It's not going to be as at risk as it looks like it is, or you may feel it is, or some people think they know what they're talking about will tell you. It's really not that much of a problem. This bit here, the back is nicely swept up, actually. One thing I've really struggled with the Covetan gloves is it doesn't take much, Covetan sabres, is it doesn't take much walloping to send this back bit down, and suddenly, kind of, obviously you shouldn't be doing large movements, but it really does rub against the gloves. If I didn't have to go off shot and it would fuck with the focus, I would show you my gloves. They've got little ridges across there where I've been playing with some different sabres, and these bits have started to droop down and scratch the gloves, whereas this is nicely swept up. So everything is kind of designed to stay out of the way for the now, but I would keep in mind that that needs to be bent out. The grip is very nice, very nice. This is a custom grip. This isn't as it comes. This has got the red leather with the braided grip. But yes, it's nice. Aesthetically, it's nice. It's a pretty sword. You know, if that sort of shit's important to you, then here it is. And this is where my biggest gripe of this weapon comes in. Fuck me, does it feel like it's curved in the hand? It really does. The blade curve is identical to the Tibetan saber, the Eastern. It's identical. I had them last night, one on top of each other, and I was comparing it, and the discrepancy was minimal. But for some reason, this just feels like it's banana-ing right behind you. So, and I think it's the grip that's making it feel like that, because the blades are identical. There's something about the grip that makes it feel just like, it's just right, like, so close my eyes, I know where the tip is, but it feels like it's here. It's crazy. It really feels very curved. So just be wary of that. It's not a bad thing, it's just going to take some getting used to if this is not your first saber. If you've trained with a different saber, or you want to get a nicer saber from what you've got already, or you know, whatever, just be aware that this one is going to feel quite different. It really does feel very banana-y. It kind of feels like you really need to hold it very, very, very close to the bottom. Much more like a sport fencing saber. Obviously it's not going to work, but it kind of feels like that's where it wants to be. It really wants you to hold it like this. This is how it feels most comfortable in the hand, but yeah, it will take you a while to get used to it. It just feels very, very curvy. So those are the raw stats on it. What are my thoughts? As I said, yes, right. It's got the Sigi ring. I haven't got another sword to whack it with. Oh, I do. Golf bag full of swords. Oh, fuck it. It's got that the Sigi ring. It sounds lovely. It really does sound lovely when it fights. The balance, it makes the tip feel about 2 or 3 centimeters lighter than the Eastern. So it is a little bit faster in the tip. I had left and right-handed. For fencers out there, my little quick parry for balance is like the little inertia test. Do circular cease in both hands and cut. And I try and stop, and it's the inertia versus the inertia. See which one travels further. This one came out a little better with that just quick idiot's tip. So this one feels lighter, it feels faster, it feels whippier, but it does feel different in the hand. It feels a little strange. So just be aware of that. Really, that's my only drawback. Spatulated tip, I mean, give a shit, you know. It's my professional opinion on that. Fuck's given. Just check. You know, if your club is vehemently opposed to spatulated tips, then maybe just check with your club provider first before you buy it, because otherwise you're going to be buying essentially a 300 quid sword and then not be able to use it at your club. Threaded pommel-ish, I mean pommel, you know what I mean. I don't know if Sigi sells spare blades, but if it explodes, you may be able to talk to them nicely and ask them, they may be able to send you out a spare blade. I probably should have looked at that before I started recording, but hey, research and professionalism, right? So yeah, honestly, do I recommend it? Yeah, yes I do. You need to, with this saber, much more than really its main competitor is going to be the Eastern Tibetan. The main thing to think about is that it's quite different in the way that it is and feels. So if you're just looking for a new saber that's not an Eastern, just be aware that this will feel very different. It is quite divergent from what you're expecting. But that in itself isn't a bad thing. So yes, I do recommend it. It's just a little bit funny. Anyway, that's fucking pretty though, isn't it? It's very nice. If Sigi can do one thing, it is a good looking sword. But on to the question.